Okay, shall we make a start? Welcome back to the continuation of the SNOMED and FHIR tutorial. Has everyone been able to get to this web page? The link there is snomed.org/FHIR-DevDays. And there's some links on there for the servers we're going to be working with. You could hit any FHIR terminology server. Onto server have one. You could use that if you fancied. There are a number of them out there. I'll scroll that up a bit. The first one there, snowstorm-FHIR, that's actually an alias for our terminology browser, which is publicly available. So when you hit browser.ihtsdotools.org, that is now being run by the Snowstorm Terminology Server, and we've got as many national editions as we've been able to get hold of in there. So we'll be looking at the Spanish one today in one example, but there are other languages. I was just looking up goat during the break there in Dutch, and there are many, many goats in SNOMED apparently. So the exercises, this is a let's build session, but it is not possible to, maybe some people manage it. I would not be capable of writing a piece of software in the time that we've got available with a system that I've never seen before. So all we're going to do is hit the API with the examples that we discussed in the previous session. And we're going to use ECL, which is my favorite thing to do so. So you'll have a go at constructing some expression constraints yourself, putting those into an implicit value set, querying and getting some SNOMED back to look at. So really just working with what we were talking about in the previous session. So that was our browser. The second server is one that's been set up just for DevDays, snowstorm-DevDays. Shall I make that a bit bigger? This has no security on it whatsoever. It's completely open. It is, if you were to spin up Snowstorm yourself, that's basically what's there. You're expected to put your own security on top of that. We use Nginx to intercept calls and validate people's cookies that way. Snowstorm itself doesn't specify what security should be used, and I haven't set anything up, so it's completely read-write and open. So you'll be able to create your own value sets in there, which I hope we get onto because that's the fun bit. I don't know if you'll have time to do it, but you're certainly welcome to download our open source terminology server, install it on your own machine. Has anyone done it? Has anyone done that? Nobody looked at this before coming to DevDays, but that's certainly an option. You could install SNOMED CT on your own machine and run it directly just using localhost on port 8080. Right, any questions before we start? So there's a number of questions. Some of them I'll maybe go through with you. Others I'll maybe give you a bit of time to work out yourself. But we'll maybe do the first one together to make sure we're all able to access the server. Discover the capabilities of the SNOMED International Snowstorm Terminology Server. Does anyone know what resource that is that will tell you that information? Open to the floor here, big points on offer. No, that is the capability statement. So as a resource, but you request it using the metadata endpoint. So let's go and find that. So if I say metadata, that comes back. Now, a colleague of mine, Kai Kulu, wrote the Snowstorm Terminology Server for use in SNOMED. We didn't know it at the time, but it was also going to be our FHIR server. So when my boss came to me and said, right, we're going to do FHIR, I want you to make it happen, I found the happy libraries and was able to bolt those on top. So my colleague's work does all the heavy lifting, but Happy also does a lot of heavy lifting for me. And when you're working in Happy, it will put together your capability statement by looking through your source code to find what services you have implemented, and it will build this capability statement for you. So let's make that a bit bigger. The FHIR endpoints for Snowstorm are very much a work in progress. They are pretty specific to SNOMED. We will work with other code systems just in the sense that if they're part of your value set, then we don't particularly check for that. We'll just store whatever you give us and give it to you back. But generally, we're only concerned with Snowstorm. There was a question in the break about what terminology to use if you're working with multiple code systems, and the commercial ones that are available out there do, and a lot of other implementations do, but SNOMED International is concerned with SNOMED. So we support code system, concept map. I'm not sure why we can work with structure definitions. That might be part of Happy itself. I've certainly not coded it, and we do a lot for value sets. Lookup, translate, expand, and whatever I expand is. Okay, has everyone been able to get to that URL? Can you see? Is anyone struggling with that? Can you? Okay. Okay. DevDays. So we're just going to go. The reason you don't get anywhere if you just go to FHIR is because it thinks it's where's your slash gone? Yeah, good. Okay. Now your JSON doesn't look as pretty as my JSON. I've got an extension installed called JSON View, which you can install. Recommend any developer. Chrome JSON View extension. Right, I would recommend you install that into Chrome because it makes your life so much easier. Okay, next exercise. This is going to be using code system lookup. And we want information about the common cold. So I'm going to cheat and go straight to the answers. So code system, $lookup. My system is SNOMED CT, that is the URI for SNOMED, and my code is 822720006. And we'll open that. And make it visible. And this is what we know about the common cold. We've got a number of what FHIR calls designations, and SNOMED would call descriptions. The first one coming back will probably be the preferred term. When we expand it as a value set, we return the preferred term. When we're looking at the code system, then we're returning the FSN. SNOMED International generally thinks about FSNs because they can never be confused. But if you were looking at a user interface, then this semantic tag can cause confusion. You would generally use the preferred term. So we've got all the descriptions for that concept, and then there may be some properties at the end as well. A lot of descriptions for the common cold. We're getting the Spanish back. Getting ahead of ourselves. Let me take that out. And the only properties we're returning there are the effective time. That's the time at which this concept was last changed. And the module. So that belongs to the international edition. And the immediate parent. There, okay. Right, anyone having problems getting to that endpoint? Okay, right, the next one. Give that same thing to me in Spanish. Now this is not something you would work out on your own, so I'll tell you this one. In the URL, we specify the module for the Spanish edition, which is there, 499.081.005, and the same code. And English, 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 Spanish. So there's the Spanish fully specified name. I said that the Spanish edition took the trouble to translate all their fully specified names as well. Okay. Right. Do you want to have a go at this last one? I want the property for myocardial infarction, and I want the normal form. So we saw that during the talk. Do you want to have a go at constructing the URL for that? First person to get it, raise your hands, and we'll all cheer. Well, I'll cheer. You can join me in the cheering if you want. So you need that SCT ID there. Type that in. And you need a parameter of a property, which is going to be the normal form. I'll go and find that page actually in the FHIR website. SNOMED on FHIR group spent a lot of time talking about this page. So it's nice we've got people from HL7 on the call, so we'll spot things in their website and they'll tell us we're not getting things right. And we get good access to each other's groups through that. So there's the normal form property that you're requesting. Has anyone got there yet? Don't make me give you an answer. Come on, someone get there. I'm not grading you on this, right? But if I was grading you on this, all right. All right, let's see if I can do it from scratch. So I don't want to be working in Spanish. Get rid of that. SNOMED CT. The fact that I passed the format as JSON is interesting in these examples that were written. This was actually written for the June presentation that was given in Redmond. And at that time, everything was coming back as XML by default. And it took some time to work out why that was. It's because browsers generally, and Chrome specifically, pass, say, in their HTTP accept header, say, give me back HTML, which is great. But they say, if you don't have HTML, give me XML. And so the server, the happy code that picks that up says, oh, you want XML as a fallback, I'll give you XML. I say, no, this is a browser. I don't want that. So we used to have to force it to JSON. But I spoke to James Agnew about it, and he said, oh, you need to use an interceptor. So I coded that, and now I'll detect things coming in. And if they ask for HTML, I'll assume they don't also want XML, and I'll say, no, give me JSON back, because I like looking at JSON. So there's my code. We have the FSN in pipes, but we don't need that for a URL. And the code is that. And the property I'm interested in equals normal form. Oh, and you've downloaded it in what? Aha, I did this for value set. I've done it for lookup. Is this why you're failing it? Let's open that. All right, let's give me that normal form. If I have to cheat and use the answers, I'll give myself an F. And property equals normal form. So if we go, oh, thank you. Right, myocardial infarction, all the designations, get past those, the properties of the parents, lots of parents, properties of the children. Where's my normal form gone? There we go. And this is a SNOMED expression, which looks a bit like ECL, but we're not searching for anything, we're just defining it. So that is a really tight definition of myocardial infarction there. It is a type of ischemic heart disease, and it's also a type of myocardial disease, and it's also a type of myocardial necrosis, and in fact a necrosis of an anatomical site. And this is an example of what happens once you've used the classifier, that it fills in all these parents that you didn't know about before. Now, we don't define myocardial infarction like this. When we go and type it into our terminology server, we just say it's a type of disease. And we say that you find in the myocardium structure and with an associated morphology, and the classifier comes along and goes, oh, that means it goes here, and it has all of these parents. And all that heavy lifting is done for us. And we don't need to maintain all of these parents. If things change or if something's added in, we don't need to go through every concept and say, oh, your parents changed or your children have changed. That's what the classifier does for us, just slots things where they need to be. So as long as we've got the attributes right, everything will find its right place in the hierarchy. So we'd actually call this the inferred view. And you can load SNOMED CT into Protégé alongside other terminologies. The NLM, for example, has loaded it in with RxNorm and classified the whole thing together, which is really nice to see that to be working together like that. So I've got my parents, and then the colon there says and or such that, and then the curly braces mean this is a role group, so these attributes appear together. And you could have multiple role groups. So this particular morphology, the infarction, appears together with that finding site, but you could have some other morphology affecting a different finding site, and you group those together with the curly braces. So that's what SNOMED looks like. Yeah.
So would I be able to restrict this result to only have this return this property then? I'm only interested in this normal form.
You know, you get the defaults anyway. There's probably more there than you need. It's open source. You want to do it, feel free to do it. I think I probably could take that away and restrict that. I'll write it down. And those designations take up a lot of space as well. I think we could probably tighten that. Thanks. Okay, this gets more interesting. We're now going to ask for all types of cancer. So we're going to use ECL for this, the double angle brackets saying give me all descendants of this thing. And since we were doing lookup there, we're going to switch now to value sets. I'm going to straight to the cheat sheet for this. This is going to be an implicit value set. So we're going to expand SNOMED CT with a FHIR value set. Oh, we're not using ECL yet. There's another way to do it, which is through ISA. Give me everything that is one of these things. And in fact, in the code that's written, I just translate these into ECL so I can do a one-stop shop. So I just take that string and change ISA into double brackets. So we'll run that. This was 4247 in June. and we're now at 4270. So there's new cancers been added for the January release. New types of cancer. So there's probably more information that should be in there. I was looking at the response that comes back from onto a server, and they, for example, tell you what it was you asked for when they do the return. I haven't got that in there just yet. So it's pretty terse. And you get the preferred term in English, and we'll look at an example in another language as well. Okay, so that's using an ISA. They don't get any easier. All concepts related to asthma returning the results in Spanish. So we need the module ID for the Spanish edition, which is here. And we're not going to use the concept model for this, apparently. We're just going to use the term asthma. So if we do that, we'll get a bunch of things, not just conditions. We'll get family history of asthma, that sort of thing from all over the place. Let's open that up. And we're working in Spanish. So I've no idea what those things are. Let's do that in English. And I've asked for 10 at a time. So let's give me more, because that's more interesting. 30. And we've not restricted this to disorders, so we've got family history of asthma. We've got, presume that's some sort of test result. Family history of asthma, yeah. Baker's asthma, there's a whole lot of asthmas. Okay, and you could find these in the SNOMED browser as well, so if we go to the International Edition. That would allow you to filter to specific hierarchies, but we'll see how to do that using ECL as well. Okay. And the next one, using concept map, find me the ICD-10 target for blister of ankle with infection. So we'll just do that so we can get on to exercise 3. So we're saying here, I want a translation of this code. Let's get my pointer out. Translation of this code in this code system. So my source is SNOMED CT, and my target is ICD-10, and that's a URI defined by HL7, which I found on there in the spec. And I need a URL, which is a concept map, and that's the SNOMED CT concept for the ICD-10 map. Now, something that trips people up is no, it's not happening here. Sometimes there are more parameters in this URL, so you end up with parameters within parameters. We'll see if we get an example of that later.
So where would I find this SNOMED CT definition of the ICD-10? That's that one, but
Yeah, you sort of just need to know that. I could look it up. ICD map. Now, in fact, I said ICD-10 was a complex map, so is that the same number? Yeah. Yeah, okay. Right, so let's open that up. And now there's 2 map targets. So we need some extra information to work out which one is appropriate for this specific context. There are all sorts of rules in there. I mean, an easy example I gave earlier was if the patient is female, use one code. If the patient is male, use a different code. And SNOMED doesn't see that level of detail about the patient record. So I don't know, maybe if you had the whole thing as a post-coordinated expression, you could do that programmatically. The rule is designed to be read programmatically, so it could be done. I'm not sure if anyone has.
Would I be able to do this? Sorry, but just
Sure, go. We've got
would I
time.
be able to reverse this?
Yeah,
I
right.
ICD-10 to SNOMED?
There's a reverse flag. You can add that parameter, and you need to be really careful about that because there isn't, SNOMED International has not published a map from ICD-10 to SNOMED. It's a bit like taking a JPEG and trying to put it back into RAW format. You've lost definition at that point. So what you're really saying when you do it in the reverse direction is show me all the things that take this as their target. So what SNOMED codes do I have that would map to this? And that could be interesting, and sometimes it might even be the right answer, but it's never a safe thing. But yeah, you could do that with when we have a historical association, when we've inactivated a concept and we said, well, that's outdated, I'm going to replace it with this other one. You could use the reverse map to find, well, this new concept that I've got created, what old inactive concepts is that replacing? So that would be a good use of the reverse flag in that case. Okay, let's get rid of all of these. Right. Now we get on to the ECL, which is the fun bit. I should bring up that slide. Where is my ECL? Here we go. View. Right, there's my ECL. So when we're looking at the contents of a reference set, then we're going to be using the member of operator, which is the hat. And you sort of need to know the ref set that you find, that you're looking for. So we could again go into the browser and come out of there. We could find that reference set. If I hadn't told you already, you could search for family practice reference set to get the ID for that. Right, so we're going to do an expand on an implicit value set. Do you want to give it a go yourself? Does anyone want to try, or will I just tell you the answer? Just tell me the answer, please. You want to give it a go? I'll show you the answer. Okay. Right. Let's look at this. Right, implicit value set. So I'm going to expand URL FHIR value set, which is equal to this ECL expression. Now, that's a URL encoding for the hat symbol. I think you could probably type in the hat yourself, and it would, your browser would accept that. 4270. That's interesting because that has reduced since the last time. The cancer set went up, but this one has gone down. So we've obviously inactivated some of this content since this was run in June. So there's my URL. My ECL is the members of that reference set. Now that's too many to show to. I mean, I restrict this by default. it would restrict to 1,000. I've asked for 10, but it would be too many to show. So we'd probably want to filter that as well. And you could do this at runtime. As someone typed ahead, you could keep hitting this endpoint. And filter equals, let's see if there's anything to do with leg. And this was what I was saying, that the search that we do will, thank you, will look through all the synonyms. So I've said leg, which isn't a very technical term. The clinicians would call that a lower limb. So that's the preferred term, but as a patient-friendly term, we might be saying leg. Okay. Right. Now I'm in question 2, asking for members of this reference set, and I want things that are a fracture of bone. Type of fracture. Okay. So first of all, a member of that reference set, such that your finding site, or no, here we go. And we are a type of fracture. So that's the SNOMED concept for fracture of bone. We'll run that. It was 91, and it is now still 91. Not much movement in fractures. Nobody's grown a new limb or bone in the meantime. And there's your ECL laid out a little easier to read when it's not URL encoded. So, member of that reference set and a descendant or self of this particular concept. Right, now we're going to go into the concept model a little more depth. I want an allergic reaction to pollen. And the next time I do this, I think, my boss has very helpfully written out the ECL for that. So give me everything that's a descendant of self or of disorder of respiratory system, and that is due to, equivalent to some sort of, not some sort of, a specific allergic reaction caused by pollen. We'll run that. That's a whole lot of pollen. So, there's only 5. So I've asked for 10, there are only 5, so you get everything back in one hit. Right, last section, creating value sets, and the DevDays server is open. It will take a put request. If anyone wants to construct one, you're very welcome to upload a value set. I have no idea what will happen. If something bad happens, I'll love to hear about it because I'll fix it. There's, if you've got onto the page there, I'll just scroll back up and remind you, there's a quick link for that. If you go to snomed.org/FHIR DevDays, you'll get in here. So that will let you download that JSON file. Let's download that and open it. It's a bit tricky to see. Can I make that bigger? Yes. Well done, Sublime Text. Right. Just put that on a new line for now, which you didn't like. So this is the absolute minimum you can put into a value set. I've just got the ID and the name and a compose element. And this is where ECL is really powerful, because in value sets, traditionally you would specify every member of that value set. And that's a lot of curation, that's a lot of updates, that's maintenance, it's work. When we're working with ECL, we define these things intentionally, which means if SNOMED changes, your query doesn't have to change, although you might want to check it because there'll be new things in it which could cause a problem, and it might be that you want to restrict yourself to a specific version of SNOMED to stop things moving around. But you know, life moves on, and if you don't have to do work every time a new edition of SNOMED comes out, that's got to be a good thing. So here in my ECL, I've said, give me everything that is a type of medicinal product, which has an active ingredient of caffeine and a presentation strength, which is anything at all, just the fact that it's present. So I can upload that. And I can use curl for that because you can't do put, thank you. You can't do put requests through your Chrome browser, unfortunately. So curl is a command line utility. It's on Unix. I don't know what the equivalent for Windows is. Hmm?
Curl.
They use it as well. Curl, you know how the operations all start with a $sign? Well, in Unix, that means a specific thing. That means I'm a variable that I want you to replace as you run this. So when you run an operation through curl, your $symbol will be replaced with nothing whatsoever. It will break. And I spent about an hour looking at this before I started drafting an email to Michael Lawley and SysIRA going, you know, maybe it's me, but your thing seems to be completely broken. And then it was like, hang on, there's a $sign in there. Okay, so if you've got a $sign in a curl request, you need to use single quotes so that it doesn't replace it while you're running. And the content type there is FHIR plus JSON. We're going to be resolving our URIs. So if you use the SNOMED URI for a concept, which is snomed.info/SCT/ or is it ID /ID/the SCT ID, then you'll go to the browser. So what we're going to be doing next year is detecting if anyone asks for content type of FHIR plus JSON and redirecting you to the FHIR endpoint for that instead, which is really exciting. So there's very few checks done, actually. I've started trying to, like when you upload a value set, I'm trying to do a quick expansion on it to see if your ECL is even valid, which I haven't completed. I haven't pushed that code yet. But because otherwise you could store an absolute load of nonsense and not know about it until you come to expand it. So I'm going to add that check in. So one of the few checks that's made is that whatever ID you use in your URL, that has to be part of the JSON as well in the ID field. And then you can recover that just asking for caffeine products. See if that's still there from last night. Okay. So when you request it, you get back the definition. It's not until you expand it, that you actually see what that contains. And we failed to because I got my ECL wrong. I should have re-uploaded that one. Let's do GPS instead. Got that one right. GPS. Value set, GPS, in caps. It is case sensitive, thank you. Having a good think about that. The global patient set, there's its definition, all members of the global patient set reference set, and that has 21,688 concepts which are free to use, including some that are needed for FHIR, like we made the concept for synonym and fully specified name free to use, thank you. Because it's part of the FHIR specification, which is freely available worldwide, which is really great they do that. Okay, so this page will stay up. The DevDays server, which is completely writable, you can put any nonsense in there that you fancy, and that'll stay up all week. You're very welcome to try that out in your own time if you fancy it. Oh, the last one there, I've got a minute left. So this is GPS, there's far too many to look at, so of course I can filter that and say, and filter equals heart. So I can filter that down and find all the concepts in the GPS that have heart somewhere in the descriptions. Okay, I think we're out of time. Thank you very much for following that through with me. Snowstorm is free to use. Please have a look at that. It's open source. Contribute it if you want to make it better. And anyone wants to chat to me, I'll be here, obviously. Right, thank you.